On the night of June 10, Russian troops launched a massive drone attack on the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and also used missiles. Fires and destruction reported in 7 city districts. Casualties confirmed. In addition, today Odesa also came under attack, and the Russians, as always, targeted so-called military facilities. In particular, in Kyiv, for example, the Sofisky Cathedral was damaged, and in Odesa, the State Archive building was affected. In addition, the Air Force announced today that the main target of the attack was specifically the Ukrainian capital. They also added that Russia is using shrapnel in the warheads of Shaheds for the mass targeting of Ukraine's civilian population. In this episode, we'll discuss with you the consequences of last night's Russian attack on Kyiv and Odesa, how many aerial targets were launched, how many were shot down, and how Kyiv made it through the night. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is June 10th. Let's go through everything step by step. But before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave your comment under this episode. Also, subscribe to the Pechi News Telegram channel. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in. On the night of June 10th, Russian forces launched a massive attack on Kyiv with drones and missiles. Fires were reported in 7 districts of the city. Throughout the night, the enemy relentlessly terrorized the capital with drones. Russian forces targeted civilian infrastructure and peaceful residents of the city of Kyiv. In total, 7 districts of the capital suffered damage. There were partial destructions and fires in apartment buildings and private houses. Cars and warehouse facilities were burning. Unfortunately, 4 people were injured. Most of the destruction in Kyiv occurred in the Darnitsky, Obolonsky, Shevchenkivsky and Holosivsky districts. Footage is being published from the Obolonsky district, where multi-story residential buildings were damaged. The footage shows a large hole in a high-rise building within a residential complex in the capital, revealing damage to ordinary residential buildings. It was the lower floors of the high-rise where this hole appeared that were affected, and there are destroyed apartments. The windows in the building were blown out, and the facade was damaged. Cars and the pharmacy premises were also damaged. A fire erupted at a nearby service station. Also, in the Obolonsky district, drone debris fell on the territory of one of the schools. As for the consequences in other districts of the capital, in the Desnyansky district, a car caught fire and a drone crash was also recorded. In the Shevchenkivsky district, cars were also burning. A balcony in a residential building and a business center building also caught fire, along with some non-residential premises. Meanwhile, smoke was reported in a non-residential building in Kyiv's Dniprovsky district. But in the Podilsky district, drone debris fell in 2 locations. A fire broke out in a non-residential building and a residential house in the Darnitsky district. Debris landed in a green area and open space, causing partial damage to the non-residential zone. Garages were damaged and warehouses caught fire. A forest belt is also burning elsewhere. Additionally, debris fell on a private house in the Darnitsky district. A fire erupted in a multi-story building in the Solomyansky district. In the Holosivsky district, the fall of drone debris was recorded on the territory of a non-residential building, and damage was reported in a business center. I should note here that during the night of June 10, the Russian Federation's forces launched a total of 322 drones and missiles at Ukraine. The main direction of the strike was Kyiv. In total, during the night attack, the enemy used 315 Shahed strike drones and various types of decoy drones. 2 Korean Nodong 23 ballistic missiles were also used. These are North Korean short-range ballistic missiles, and 5 Iskander-K cruise missiles. In total, air defense neutralized 284 enemy aerial attack assets. 220 were shot down by firepower and 64 were lost locally. Specifically, we're talking about 213 Shaheds, 2 KM, 23 ballistic missiles and 5 Iskander-K cruise missiles. There were impacts at 11 locations and the fall of downed debris at 16 locations. Overall, the capital, Kyiv region and Odessa suffered the most from this night attack. The enemy targeted civilian infrastructure. As a result of the shelling, a total of 19 fires broke out and 4 of them were quite large scale. It even got to the point where footage appeared showing that in Kyiv a helicopter from the state emergency service was used to extinguish the fires. As for the air attack, the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in particular the Air Force spokesperson Colonel Yuri Inat, stated that the main target of the attack was Kyiv itself. A little later, a video from the Kyiv City Patrol Police appeared online, and it reported that enemy shelling continued for more than 5 hours. Next is a quote, risking their own lives, patrol officers and rescuers stayed with the city residents all this time. We evacuated people to safe places, helped extinguish fires, and ensured the passage of emergency vehicles. And so, a video from the body cameras of patrol officers who were working at the site of the strike in one of Kyiv's districts was released. The footage, in particular, shows the first minutes of the attack on Kyiv. The video captures 2 strikes by Shahed-type kamikaze drones. You can hear the distinctive buzzing of the drones, explosions, and see bright flashes after the strikes. During the attack, patrol officers urged passers-by to take cover at once. But unfortunately, 1 woman was killed, there are injured people, and residential buildings and cars were damaged. As for Odesa, which was also struck by the enemy today as a result of a Russian drone attack on the night of June 10, the state archive of the region in Odesa was damaged. Debris from an enemy drone hit the building. According to Anatoly Kromov, head of the state archive, fragments of munitions were discovered following the Russian attack on the territory of certain central archives. There may be a temporary closure of user access to the archives while the bomb disposal experts are working. Despite the blow to the cultural infrastructure, there were no casualties or losses of archival documents. In addition, the attack also affected the Odessa film studio. Production buildings, warehouses with costumes and props were damaged, and the occupiers destroyed part of the filming complex, in particular the sets for Dovzhenko's film and the vehicles used in filming. Well, and on the film studio's page they showed the aftermath of these strikes. Well, as you can see, the Russians are targeting exactly these so-called military facilities like the state archive or, for example, the film studio. As for Kyiv, in Kyiv the Russians also struck so-called military targets in quotation marks. The St. Sophia Cathedral was damaged. At 4:40 in the morning, as a result of a powerful blast wave caused by another massive shelling of Kyiv by the Russian Federation, the cornice and the central apses on the eastern facade of the St. Sophia Cathedral were damaged. Let me remind you, this is an architectural monument from the 11th century included in the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization World Heritage List. In addition, you need to be very careful in this situation when the air raid siren sounds. Because, according to the Air Force, Russian Shahed-type drones are now equipped with shrapnel warheads designed to inflict maximum damage to personnel and equipment. But considering that these drones are striking peaceful cities, we're talking about civilians. In particular, the Air Force spokesperson Yuri Inat explained that the warhead of the drones can be thermobaric, high explosive fragmentation, or contain shrapnel. Such weapons spread damaging elements over a large area, which poses a deadly threat not only to equipment but also to civilians. Therefore, quote, in fact, during such attacks all services urge citizens not to stay near windows or outside. Because with such a warhead, the spread of these elements poses a deadly threat to the lives of civilians. This type of weapon demonstrates Russia's readiness to strike civilian neighborhoods with high destructive power. And finally, I want to add today's Kyiv International Institute of Sociology poll, which showed that Ukrainians, despite all these attacks, are not ready to surrender and are not willing to make territorial concessions for the sake of peace. In particular, the majority of Ukrainians are against any territorial concessions. The situation has remained unchanged in recent months. This was reported by Kyiv International Institute of Sociology. Over the past 3 years, Kyiv International Institute of Sociology surveys have inquired about the population's readiness to compromise for faster peace and maintaining independence. This question does not specify which territories might be subject to concessions, nor does it clarify exactly what territorial concessions are being discussed. And so, in May compared to February of 2025, the situation has not changed. 52% of Ukrainians are categorically against any territorial concessions. 38% are ready to accept certain territorial losses. And sociologists showed how specifying the territorial losses affects the survey results. If we are talking about the official recognition of certain territories as part of Russia, then the overwhelming majority, 58%, are against it. 24% are ready to accept such a fact, and also an absolute majority, 78%, reject the transfer of territories controlled by Ukraine under Russian control. 15% are ready to accept such a fact. Well, the only option where at least there is some room for discussion is the de facto recognition of Russian control without de jure recognition. And even in this case, 43% are ready to accept such a situation, while 48% are categorically against it. As Kyiv International Institute of Sociology surveys have indicated, if the peace plan has security guarantees and other vital components for Ukraine's future, the attitude is unenthusiastic, as the message stated. But more than half can accept such a scenario for ending the war. Thus, from the point of view of public opinion, any option that includes the official recognition of Ukrainian territories as part of Russia, or even more so the transfer of non-occupied territories under Russian control, will be rejected. However, Ukrainians maintain a healthy flexibility and even in the context of territorial control are ready to discuss a compromise option of recognizing Russia's de facto control without its de jure recognition. Here, I would like to remind you that the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology conducted this survey between May 15 and June 3, 2025. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinion and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all. Take care. Bye everyone. The subtitles were created by me.